Good evening once again, YouTube. It is I, your beloved host and purveyor of logical pursuits, Hell's Unicorn, here with you once again to discuss the lack of logic in politics. I've sort of attained a new sort of odd fascination with truthout.org. For no small reason because of the fact that it's just too much fun to ignore. Let's face it, the most insanely unrepressed, unhinged, unfettered brands of neoliberalism I say, are on full display for everybody to see. And believe me, there are sites to see, and I have one linked to the description. Yes, the title of this little video is The Sacrament of Union Busting. Sort of an ironic title, but fitting in some respects given the subject of the article that I'm linked to. Apparently, there is a group of Romanist scholars in Massachusetts, and note I say Romanist, not Roman Catholic. I do not confer the title of Catholic to the Roman Church, because I don't even confer the title of Christian to them anymore, given all of the nonsense that they've been putting out of late. And this is a prime example of it. Apparently, these Romanist scholars say that it's a mortal sin to be anti-union. Now, to be fair here, I'm a little bit skeptical of labels like anti-union. I figure, everybody has the right to assemble lawfully in any way they see fit. And that includes in the workplace, reasonably speaking. But by the same token, I also support the right of individuals to cross picket lines if they so choose and make money to feed their families on a wage that might be a little less than the living wage demanded by these union thugs for their tycoon bosses. And also, by the same token, I support the right of employers to not endorse unions, not to hire union workers, and to hire other people if their employees decide to unionize and try to loot the company's reserves. I support rights for everybody, not just for unions. Now, that can be construed as anti-union. Personally, I think it's sort of a pro-freedom approach to things, but apparently the Roman Church thinks a little differently. They think that it is in opposition to freedom and liberty to grant preferred status to a bunch of people who essentially demand higher pay for the same amount of work or less work, depending on which individuals we're talking about. The only thing that's really assured with unionized labor, as far as I see it, and as far as most people who tend to study the subject at all see it and don't have a preconceived bias, is that the reserve of the union's bosses tends to go up. In other words, the union bosses' pockets tend to get a little bit fatter, along with the value of their cars, their multi-million-dollar mansions, and other such assorted goodies. If you doubt this, take a look at the leadership of the AFL-CIO. They are not living without, by any stretch of the imagination. They bring about the same level of credibility to the concept of living for things other than material wealth that the Franciscan order tends to. They tend to be loaded with money, and they put forward this pretense of being under some sort of vow of poverty. But for all practical purposes, it's a bunch of nonsense. So, what are we left with to contemplate here? We have a church rampant with pedophilia, corruption, and other assorted problems, essentially telling us that if we question the authority of the almighty union, we are going to hell. My only retort to that is, if that's the criteria for damnation, then sign me up. I'm not going to be intimidated by the fear tactics of people with sticks and lead pipes under the banner of the SCIU telling me that I can't vote for certain people. So I sure as hell am not going to be intimidated by the idle threats of a pretender church that has essentially been in decline for the past 130 years. Now, for the rest of you out there in my audience, some of you might be Roman Catholics, so you might be a little disturbed by all this, but I'll just leave you with this. If the Roman Church actually excommunicated everybody who took liberties with their supposed doctrine, which seems more and more about politics and less about religion, they would have nothing but empty pews. Trust me on that. Almost nobody follows this ridiculously complex library of a doctrine that they've developed. All right? And just for the record, if you want my personal opinion, if the Roman Church wants to be a real church, it should focus a lot more on spiritual doctrine and biblical doctrine. I know biblical doctrine tends to be anathema to the Catholic Church, or excuse me, the Roman Church. I consider myself a Catholic, and I'm a very strong purveyor of sola scriptura. And they need to spend a little less time talking about politics, because they generally tend to get this stuff wrong. I mean, let's face it, this whole idea of moving priests around when there have been accusations of abuse, not a very good idea, but definitely a political idea nonetheless. Take from it what you will. And while you're at it, feel free to go over and read this article. This article was penned by an individual by the name of Dick Meister. You heard me right. That's Dick Meister. And of all places, he is actually from the city of San Francisco. Figure that out. You can't make this stuff up. Well, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.